Welcome to the Time Freedom Calculator overview for use on a computer. There is a separate recording if you're using the Time Freedom Calculator on a mobile device. However, I'll tell you that if you plan to use this to do some detailed planning for yourself, you'll want to use the laptop. So let's begin. The Time Freedom Calculator is designed to be the perfect amount of not too easy, not too hard, not too simple, not too complicated. It's right in the middle. There are 4 numbers across the top, and as you hover over the label, you can get additional information. There are also cards that are aligned loosely with the time freedom formula. If you've read my book, you'll know that lifestyle expenses matched with investment income, here called savings and investments, and also combined with flexible work, here called flexible income, are designed to help you find time freedom sooner than you might find absolute financial freedom. Now, there are numbers associated with each of these cards, and you can add additional cards below in that respective column. Why are there 5 green numbers? Right now, there's no graph, right? There's no output to tell if you're successful. That output will appear underneath as soon as you input the first 5 numbers. So let's do that. In our example, we are currently 42 years old. We would like to live more freely as a free timer with time freedom in 3 years. That's common based on the average targeted reader of my book. So I'll indicate that my goal is 45 years old. And I want to plan until I'm 100 years old because we're living longer and longer these days. Our goal with the Time Freedom Calculator is once we input all of our expenses, all of our savings and investment, and all of our flexible income, can the money that we've created for ourselves and that we're using last us until we're 100? So in other words, given that I'm 42, can I start living flexibly at 45 and have my money last until I'm 100? Now, to get our first, we're going to fill this out completely, but to get our first graph, we're going to put in a few numbers. We know that in our example that we live on average of $120,000 per year. Again, you can use labels for each of there's help text for each of these labels. And we are going to indicate that we have right now saved already, we're in the middle of our career, $530,000. Now, the moment I click off of here, we're going to get our first graph. Notice this comment right here, scroll down to make more updates. What happens is we now are immediately listed with a kind of an untitled name of the scenario. Our success banner, which is showing up in red, you've guessed it, that means we're running out of money. See, from age 40 to 100, our amount of money comes up here and then drops immediately. And the reason is because we haven't finished filling out our input fields. Now, if we scroll down, this is where we see the rest of our information, the entry points, the data. So this is all appearing on one page. Now, if we scroll back up, the other thing that I want to show you before we go back into completing our information is that you can scroll across and see information at various ages. And over here, you can flip from the chart view to the table view. And for those that are more mathematically inclined, you basically read across the table, get to the ending balance of that year, begins the beginning balance of the following year, and you keep moving across the table in that way. Based on your starting balance, you add in anything that's purple, you subtract what's gray, and you come up with your ending balance. The numbers that aren't purple or gray go into calculating the other numbers. Now let's go back to the chart. Okay, this is telling me that if I try to be free in 2028 when I'm 45, it's just not going to work. It's all zero. I have no amount of savings that will help me there. So let's scroll down and actually first complete all of our data. Now, first let's look at lifestyle expenses. On average, we're saying that we're going to spend $120,000 a year. We are going to have that grow by inflation, kind of starting immediately. And at 70 years old, we're going to drop our expenses down by 10%. This is based on research, shows that as we get much older, our spending does reduce. And it reduces despite the fact that healthcare costs may increase, all of the other costs combined associated with living go down, such that net we have a reduction in 10%. Also, this is another key figure. What is your average tax rate? And this is not your marginal tax rate, but the average tax rate overall of all income that you're earning. Again, if you're unsure of what to put here, I'm going to be preparing a more detailed FAQ and guidance to all of these fields. But the reason that they default is because for the vast majority of people in this kind of, middle income, middle savings range, these are the numbers that will work for you. So let's just leave them for now. The one way in which the calculator helps over the time freedom formula, which is just 1 year in focus, is that we can look into the future. What if we have a child who's going to need to go to college? We can add an extra expense for college tuition. I don't know what that calls. We're going to say they're going to go to a state school. And this is for our age range. When is this going to happen? I'm going to say age 47 to 51. So for 4 years, I'm going to pay $30,000 a year. And again, if I'm currently 42, that means my son's in 8th grade. And so in 5 years, that's where we're going to be hit with our first college expense. You can continue to add expenses. The idea is the ones that you add either need to be one-time expense or a kind of expense over several years, because by and large, the kind of day-to-day living expenses are going to grow according to inflation and be covered in the first box. Now let's flip over to the second one, savings and investments. Currently, we have $530,000 based on how we're going to invest. What is our investment rate earlier in life, later in life, and at which age are we transitioning from early to later? The reason that there are two numbers here is that oftentimes we grow our investments more aggressively earlier, and then once we retire or get later in life, we can't take as much risk, so we drop that down. So I default 8 and 5%. You can change this accordingly based on your investments. Now, one other thing, before we reach age 45, we're working in a traditional career, we're going to assume in this example. So for the next 3 years, 42, 43, 44, I have the ability to create some additional savings. So I'm going to call this, what are my yearly savings as an employee for the next 3 years? I think that at my straight job, I can save an additional $24,000 a year. I'm not going to try to grow that year over year, but from the time I'm 42 to 44, I can save this additional money. You may have other ways in which you're saving on top of the money that you're spending and on top of the savings that you already have. You can continue to enter those here. Now let's get to flexible income. And this is the huge differentiator between your typical retirement calculator. Most retirement calculators are trying to get you to a retirement age, and then after that age, you live off your earnings. That's not what time freedom is. Time freedom is when I get to 45, I may still earn some money, but it's going to be flexible. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. This is not required to calculate, but we're going to add in, we've got flexible work that we want to do, and we're going to work it till 70. Because if you've read my book, you know that if you can devise this perfect work, why would you ever want to give it up? Well, we're going to assume we're going to give it up at 70, but from age 40, we're going to say we're going to earn, let's say, $120,000, less than maybe we're currently making. And I'm going to do that from age 45 to 70. And I'm going to inflate that amount starting now. Okay. In terms of inflation starts, you have 3 selections here. You can never inflate the number. You can inflate it starting now, or you can inflate it starting in your free age. There are different ways in which you might choose this. I default them all to now because on average, that's what the vast majority of the numbers work for people, but I've built in flexibility to do never, now, and free. All right, what else do we have to think about in the future? Any money that's coming in, flexible income. So flexible income includes flexible work, which I've already included, or other flexible income. Like, yeah, we have our savings and investment, but guess what? I happen to work at a job where I'm going to get a pension, and I can get it starting at age 60. Starting at age 60, I'm going to actually be able to collect $30,000 per year. Remember, all of these numbers are annual. They're never monthly. And I'm going to collect that starting at age 60, and I'm going to go till age 100, not 1,100. My pension inflates starting now. Some may never inflate. That's why you would choose that appropriately. And then also in this column, we can select one-time cash infusions. So I'm going to say cash out home equity. After our son goes to college, we're going to sell our home. And it's going to result in us netting $400,000. And we're going to do this when our kid graduates, right? He went to school from 47 to 51. We're going to do that at age 52. And I think it's worth $400,000 now. I'm going to say, yeah, let's just inflate that. Nah, let's actually never inflate that because that's just what I expect to get at that point. Now, based on this, when we've made all these changes, the chart's automatically updated. So let's go up. Aha, look at this. Beautiful. What we're seeing now is that based on all those inputs, and here I'll show you the inputs. They're all in here. Here's our starting savings. Here's it growing. Here's that savings we did for 3 years. Here's investment gains built off of the savings, the starting balance. Here are our expenses that are going to hit, right? We inflated it starting at 120, and these expenses start to hit once we become free. So they hit at age 45. And at age 45, we're also making some money, right? Flexibly until 70. If you go down here to 70, you see that drops off. Why do we still have some money? Because we're earning that passive pension income. So all of those numbers have been filled in, and we can watch the change in our balances. And if we go back to the chart, we can see that, yes, we're growing all the way up. Now, that is how you use the calculator. Now, notice we never had to sign up. We never had to sign in, anything like that. If you want to create multiple scenarios, you can, but if you want to save off or download, you have to create an account. So if I were to hit save, it's going to ask me to log in. If I don't have an account, I need to sign up. So we'll sign up here. I'm going to do Brian Herriot plus, let's call this demo1@gmail.com. And it's going to send me a code. Once it sends me a code, it's going to ask for what that code is. I'm going to go over and look at my email. It actually comes pretty quickly. And I've noticed that I do have a code. The code is here. Once I log in, it will create an account for me. Okay. Brian Herriot at Demo1. And now I'm able to save this. I'm going to call it free at 45 and 120,000 until age 70, right? And that's what that's called. Now, if you want to do other scenarios, maybe you want to adjust, see if you want to work shorter or longer, or if college tuition costs more, what I recommend doing is creating a new scenario. So you can save, or you can do this, you can copy it. See, now there's 2 of them there, and now you can change, we'll call this the adjusted scenario. Okay, how about that? And then we can go ahead and start changing these numbers. Like, what if I want to do this at 50, right? And you can see that if you wait longer, you're going to grow an even higher amount. So we can start changing all these things. And again, like every time you create a new scenario, it appears over here on the left. And you never have to remember a password, because every time you log in, it'll send an code to your email. Once you're logged in, though, it'll stay in for quite a bit of time. You don't have to keep relogging in. Before I close the demo, I want to show that this is how you will access online videos for various different scenarios to try to find a scenario that matches your scenario. I'm also building out additional FAQs and a more detailed how-to set of instructions. This is a link to buy my book, which walks you through how to use the calculator as part of a larger discussion of time freedom. And of course, if you ever want me to do this for you and walk through ideas for how to create more time freedom in your life and check the financial numbers against it, you can click this button to book a one-on-one session with me, and we can do that together. Thank you so much. Have fun with the calculator. It's a great tool.